What's up, everybody? Welcome to the View from Jamestown podcast edition. This is episode 80. This is the September 2022 edition, and we are sitting down this morning with Inside Sales Manager Nicole Greenberg, TCC President Robb Roach, VP of Sales and Marketing AJ Petrarca, and Latin American Operations Manager Javier Fernandez. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You guys are in a new order over here. It almost screwed me up.
Yeah. I know, I'm surprised you still ran through that like a champ.
Yep. Yeah, we got Robb in a t-shirt. What did Ryan say? You're wearing a comforter today?
Yeah, an oversized comforter.
Afghan.
Yeah.
I'm getting hot just sitting next to her. It's
I was going to say.
Full disclosure, it's super light. You know, you gotta.
Doesn't look light.
It absolutely is. I mean, you could try it on later if you want.
No, good. Appreciate
Not
the offer.
convincing me that's like that. It's like
No, it is. It is. Trust me. You gotta.
it's only
dress for them.
September. You jump at the gun a little bit.
September is sweater weather.
Soup weather, sweater weather.
Soup. I thought
Sweater
it was
weather, that's-
pants weather. No, we're all wearing
I'm still-
pants.
Oh, you're in
You're
pants.
still in shorts.
Yeah, I was
Ben.
gonna say.
I'm still
Are
wearing
you?
shorts.
I'm in flip flops still. I'm holding on to the summer. I don't want to let it go.
We're in a total conundrum here.
We're all out of sorts. No.
Yeah, it is. It was chilly last night.
You got your Christmas lights up?
Oh God.
Didn't,
You mean
didn't
You
they,
must have your
my
Halloween
menorah?
stuff out.
No, God, no. No, trust
the
me. That,
menorah's not up.
didn't the Christmas lights stay up? Did they ever come down?
unfortunately.
They did come down?
Yeah, unfortunately. I was not happy about that.
Did you take yours down? Yours were up for a little while.
Mine are still up.
Yeah. So you're ready to go.
It took a long time to get them that way,
was
so I
gonna
just
say-
they're not plugged in.
And they're
They're ready
perfect.
to go for this year.
They're in a perfect line. So.
Then a little piece of me died inside when I drove up, and Ryan's like, "Oh, I took the Christmas lights down." I was like, "Why would you do that? It took me so long
Yeah.
and so much." And I was just like, "Man,
Well, you guys were gone all weekend for the bachelorette party. I had a Christmas candle going. I'm not gonna lie.
you did?
Oh yeah, the
What?
pine scented candles are the best thing.
What?
Abby gets so mad at it.
I was gonna say, I know your wedding's 2 weeks away, but like, it's
I
like
look
a
at
little
you,
like
look at you a
crazy.
lot differently now that I know that you burn a Christmas scented candle when you're by yourself.
I would do it. I would do it year round, but Abby's opposed. Abby's
Oh,
opposed.
man.
Anyways,
On that note,
how's everything going?
Good. No complaints.
well.
No complaints.
No complaints.
Been an interesting couple weeks, I think. Seems like we're having a lot of the same conversations with a lot of people. Stuff to get a feel for what's going on. I think stuff seems like it's a little bit slow, but then people say that they're still producing just as much. So we've kind of heard that term, like rightsizing inventories a little bit. People bringing inventories not so much to like quote unquote just in time delivery times, but also not COVID era where people are buying whatever they can get their hands on. So in general, it seems like people are still producing. Demand is still strong, just maybe not buying as many raw materials to keep as much on the floor is I think kind of the gist we've gotten.
Talking USA, I assume.
Yeah.
I would say that sounds about right. You know, it's it's about right.
I sort of can't make sense of it because, like, you talk to some producers and their tanks are full and they're ready to shut down, but then customers and users are, still running and gunning and can't keep up with the orders. So it's like there's a disconnect. I think it's high inventories has a lot to do with that, but it's, I don't know, tough to make sense of at the moment.
Yeah, from a producer perspective, they're saying that there's demand for lower prices, and yet, the raw material costs are still the same. So shipping costs are still the same for the most part from the last couple months, and thank God we averted a rail strike. So sort of getting ahead of ourselves here, but that could have been a disaster.
Very much so. And you mentioned, I asked that question, you obviously said U.S. first. So it seems like we're seeing a lot of regionality, different things happening in the U.S. versus Europe versus Asia, which has been kind of interesting to wrap our head around and understand what's going on in different places.
I think that the only reason that I remain bullish about America is because some of the bills that have passed, there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to be happening soon. There's the chip, projects that are going on. We're well into making our own chips. There's been a lot of boost from, government bills and programs. And we're just coming out of a full throttle couple of years, and there's going to be a bit of a hangover. So that's where we're at right now, because not only was demand the strongest probably we've ever seen in our lifetimes, but the supply chain was as broken as we've ever seen in our lifetime. And now there's a bit of correction on both, and demand is definitely weaker, and the supply chain has been corrected. There's been no hurricanes that have hit the Gulf, thank God, and no real breakdown in the supply chain here in the United States. But just in the last, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen just a tidal wave of offers from Asia. Very low priced, very competitive, very, but it's still 8 weeks out.
Right.
So my advice is you're still going to see some correction on domestic pricing here, based on slightly lower gas and much lower oil and much, much lower demand.
Seems like stuff's picked up maybe a little bit this week. Like I know we had some plasticizer tote orders this week that hadn't happened a little while. And
well, and it's funny because I know we always talk about having safety stock on the floor just for, the rainy day situations. And there were a handful of scenarios where that happened this week. And I think it's really important to make sure that, you're taking care of yourself in that aspect, because sometimes, the packaged plasticizers are easy to, freight wise, typically get somewhere, but, you don't want to get in a shutdown situation. So, just always erring on the side of caution.
And even beyond just plasticizers, like if you usually buy bulk of products, having totes and drums on the floor, if you use super sacks, having some 25 kg bags just to keep the plant running if needed. So
exactly.
We'll still see a lot of that.
Yeah. So, but it was interesting that there were so many instances of that this past week, where, we historically, we were seeing it, people were automatically stocking up for safety on the floor. And it's like they almost forgot about that because everything was going so smooth. So I think it kind of was that reality check, like anything can happen.
Yeah.
Wonder if it had to do with the impending rail strike, like people trying to, build up inventories in, anticipation of trucking getting crazy, which luckily it didn't happen, but it could have been some of that.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, though, you never know. It could be a situation where that happens and you don't have control over it. So everyone else has probably thinking in the same mindset that you are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know one customer told me that they had bought, they usually buy X product and rail, and they had put in orders for trucks because they'd rather get in line and then cancel that truck order than try to get in line after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is, smart for them. Obviously, it's not great for suppliers. They obviously don't want you to be canceling orders like that. But yeah, we're putting contingency plans in, and I'm sure still are, since I don't know if it's 100% averted or not. But something to watch.
I've also seen on the bulk side, people saying, no, we're not going to buy, and then the orders come in.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
There's and then we've also seen some of our contract customers be a little bit abusive, say, oh, well, we're going to wait a couple months because we see, and that's short-sighted, so it's it's a pendulum that swings on the buying and the selling side of who can be abusive or not sometimes, and that's happened recently a few times, which is discouraging.
Yep. Yeah, the other thing that I guess worth keeping in mind for this time of year too is there's, I'm sure, plenty of companies that are on the calendar year, so they may want lower raw material inventories on the floor, coming into December. So
we've been saying that for a long time. The fourth quarter is going to be, it's going to be interesting, which would mean a first quarter that's robust.
Mm-hmm.
Not even just the first quarter, maybe right in January, people wanted to bring inventories right back theoretically, so it'd be interesting.
Yeah, maybe the first half. But there's still all the speculation of a recession coming, early 2023 or something like that. I just don't see it personally.
Yep. AJ mentioned the rail strike briefly. So today is September 16th, which was the, deadline for a deal to get done. Sounds like there's at least a tentative deal. I know we'll have our logistics company on here in a little bit to talk about kind of more in depth on what's going on with that rail strike, but obviously something that would have massive implications if it didn't in fact happen. And it sounds like we're not necessarily out of the water yet, so it'd be interesting to keep an eye on that and hopefully not have that come into play because it could have major implications.
I think it's done. So I think it's averted. I didn't hear that it's still pending, but
yeah, I don't know if it was like an absolute deal or if they were just like they made something happen to avoid the deadline today.
Like a 30-day, something about a 30-day, but I think we're well on our way of averting that disaster. But
tentative deal to avoid strike.
Okay.
So they're not going on strike today, which is the good news.
That is
great news.
It's like one of those things where it's like too big of a deal that they can't let it happen, right? Like the government stepping in and saying that it can't.
Well, it would affect everything from rail to even like Amtrak. I mean, that is just wild. The level of reach that has.
Like Ben, you sent the article earlier this week that showed the amount of trucks that would be needed to cover
Yeah,
the rail demand.
470,000 trucks a day extra or something like
Yeah,
that.
like it's just not it's not feasible. Like
No.
the country will shut down.
Right.
You know.
Right. It's one of those industries that's not exactly like sexy or exciting, but like it's the backbone of so much of what we do, not just chemicals, but moving everything around, food, goods, people. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's crazy how big of a deal it is that, people I think don't give it credit for.
I don't see it on your list, Ben, but there was a recent ruling that kept tariffs in place, and a lot of people were talking about the China tariffs being removed. I mean, what a disaster that would be if the tariffs were removed in a market or on a distribution level where all of our inventories are deflating in value.
Yep.
And then you inject a massive amount of low cost,
It's a 25%
25%
cut.
discount.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would be a disaster. And so, another crisis averted, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like they're at least here to stay for the short term. I know one of the things we talked about in our most recent meeting was the exclusions. I know some
Mhm.
products, especially some big products for us, are currently excluded, but
Right.
beginning of this year, the exclusion took 4 or 5 months to be put back into place. So I don't know if you've heard anything about that for next year yet, or we're still kind of waiting and hearing on.
No, I haven't heard anything about it for next year. I don't think we will until it
Later.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even this year, we didn't know anything about it until they reinstated it. Right?
It was like April or May or something, right? Like it took a good while before the exclusion went back into place.
yeah, I think you're right. I think April or May timeframe is when it went back into effect.
Another good piece of productivity from the U.S. government getting.
Yeah. I mean,
Doing
those
it in a timely
exclusions,
fashion.
are there for a reason, and hopefully they just they keep on renewing the exclusions at least, because that's those have been proven that there's a reason for them, right? So
Yeah. Or even if not, at least say ahead of time that it's not, so you can plan ahead. I mean, whatever the answer is fine, but we got to plan for something.
exactly.
So, kind of news around the industry. We've started to hear some big chemical companies, talking about their Q3 expectations. Obviously, I think beginning of Q3, things were much more bullish, and maybe has been, a lot of these companies are feeling the effects of some of these slowdowns. I think Eastman lowered Q3 production projections by 19-20%, and other companies are kind of hinting at the same. So, won't be surprised, I think, to see returns and expectations down for Q3, Q4 between demand coming off a little bit and then seeing what happens with energy prices, especially companies that produce things in Europe. Be interesting to see what happens here in the next couple months.
Yeah, these are global companies, so it's not just USA. It's as you mentioned, Europe and Asia as well. There's been vast investments in Asia, and Asia's gone quiet, and Europe has a war and infrastructure that's no longer supporting their gas and oil. So
Yep.
in many locations, so yeah, it's Dow, Eastman. Those are two big names that are going to certainly be impacted.
Yeah, and I guess thinking about energy prices, that's been a big thing, both in the U.S. and especially in Europe. I know Rob, you mentioned a little bit earlier that oil and gas, obviously gas is at extremely high levels based on historical levels, but has come off a little bit, and crude's come down a bit too. Obviously thinking about the U.S., I think someone said that nat gas in Europe is like 10x whatever the U.S. is currently trading at, which is a mind-boggling number.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be $85 per MMBTU. Yeah, I mean we're sitting at $8.50, which I remember in 2009, 2010 ish, maybe it was 2011, 12 when it went to $9, $10, $11, $12. People were panicking.
Yeah,
and we're sitting here at $8.50, and you're not really hearing much about it. There is some of the most respected energy pundits are saying, look for $120 a barrel oil and higher, 12, 13 per MMBTU gas. We haven't really had a cold snap yet. I mean, it was cool this morning. It wasn't.
It was cool, but it wasn't cold.
Right.
Right. Well, you're
yeah.
from Exeter, which is probably cooler in Exeter, but it was.
Well, than Jamestown. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
it's 40,
coastal, you're right on the
48,
water
maybe
here.
48 here this morning, which was beautiful out. But
what's the ocean still? What, 75, 74
it
right
was
now?
60, 65, 68. The other day it was still
warm.
pretty warm. Yeah, very nice time to go for a swim. But when it does turn colder, propane, has been certainly tracking up. Propylene values are increasing.
Yep.
So, we have found a home in $80 to $90 a barrel WTI in the $8-ish to $9-ish range per MMBTU gas. I don't know if it'll stay there. A lot of people believe it will not.
Yeah, Yeah, it seems like one of the big questions is what will happen, obviously, once it gets cold and people are using nat gas to heat their homes between here and in Europe. So it'd be interesting to think, especially in Europe with so much chemical production there, once people need to also heat their homes, I think it's going to be interesting.
There's a lot of concern coming into the winter months now, especially that the Nord Stream pipeline is completely zero.
Yep.
So
Something to keep a close eye on. How do you concur?
Yes. I concur.
What's going on today, Javi? How are we doing over there?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I was just in Mexico not too long ago, and the stocks are full, tanks are full. That's a little bit concerning. So we see a little bit of what we see in the U.S. They tell me, quote me just for a reference, so I have it on my books, but I'm not gonna buy this month. I'm like, wow, that's shocking,
Yep.
So that we've seen a lot of that, and we're shifting our buying. We were relying on India, Europe. Now we're looking more at Taiwan, Korea, Asia to compete in Latin America. So we see a little of that because for the U.S. it's not competitive at the moment.
Based on like FOB pricing or freight or both?
Both, a little bit of both. So yeah, we're shifting. We have good connections. We're a global company, so we have an office in Nanjing. We have good partners in Taiwan, in Korea, India, Turkey. So we're covering all the bases, and Europe is our good partner.
Yep.
So we're covering most of.
Yeah, you just said what, the Latin American coating show?
No, that was like a couple of months ago. No, I was just going to see customers.
Okay.
Just visits.
And then you're planning on the K show. Europe.
Planning the K show. Yeah, that should be good.
And then we're all coming to APLA and
Cancun. Everyone wants to go.
Yep.
That should be good.
Yep.
You guys are welcome.
I think we have it on recording that Rob said that's okay. So
Yep.
yeah, it's okay. It's fine.
I got to book travel.
Yeah. brush up on my Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, but things are still moving. The demand's still strong. Inflation is a problem, but things are still moving. But just there's a little bit slow in demand, but things still moving.
So they're saying that they're also slow. Like it's not like they're
Yeah.
bringing inventories down. They're
Yeah.
just demand's been a little bit slow.
A little bit slow, yeah.
Awesome. And you talked about Asia a little bit, obviously the importance there of it being a important supply partner for us. Sounds like there was a typhoon that I think is hitting China as we speak, which will impact certainly, especially shipping availability. I'll let AJ pronounce the typhoon name.
Oh, Muifa?
Yeah, I
Moifa?
think that's what you heard, right, George? You listened to that video?
M-U-I-F-A.
M-U-I-F-A.
Moifa.
Yep.
But I think it hit the Shanghai area a couple days ago, and they evacuated the port, so it's going to cause some shipping delays and things like that. But China seems to have been real slow prior to that, so I don't expect any big effects in supply chain. But it's just something to keep an eye on. It's typhoon season there, so like we pay attention to hurricane season here. It's they got the similar thing happening on their that side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else really going on, so why not throw a typhoon in the mix just for
Just for good measure.
Yeah. Awesome. I think there's a lot going on. Anything that we didn't talk about in there? I think that kind of covers it.
Good. Yeah, I think you covered most of it.
I know we talked about the rail strike a little bit. We are lucky to have Jamie coming on from the logistics company. He, amongst many of his duties, closely kind of manages and works with a lot of their rail fleets and what's going on the rail line. So I'm sure he'll have a good update on what's going on with that rail strike. So we will give it over to TLC. Morning, Jamie. How you doing today?
Morning, Ben. Not too bad. How about yourself?
Doing very well. I think last time we talked to you, you were fresh back from Hawaii.
Yeah.
You're fully back immersed in the day to day.
Definitely.
The beauty of logistics these days.
Yeah.
How's everything going?
Not too bad. I mean, there's been, a lot of stories out there and a lot of things happening in the logistics environment recently, but overall it's, there's still plenty to do, plenty to work on.
Seems like in general we've seen, especially on like the trucking side, capacity improving maybe a little bit. It's been a little bit easier to book trucks here in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some capacity opening up, especially for, the short notice pickups in like the Northeast, liquid bulk. We've gotten some, I know, saw some 1-day notice pickups that were getting done, which
Nice.
going back a few months ago
Wouldn't happen.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah. And I know the slight improvements in trucking has almost been negated by a potential rail strike. So I'm sure you managing a lot of the rail movements for TLC, something you've kept a close eye on, and I'm sure I've had ample questions on both internally and externally over the past week or so. So today, I guess, since it's a sort of important part of it, so today's the 16th, which was the original, I guess, due date to come to an agreement on averting a rail strike, and it sounds like that's happened. But what's kind of the latest with the potential strike?
Yeah, so today was technically the second deadline. This has been something that has been developing really all summer.
Yep.
They worked on it, going back to like June, end of June, I think was the initial deadline. But with some mediation from the government, they got through and into this secondary deadline with some recommendations from a executive committee board, which as of right now it looks like a deal has tentatively been reached with 11 of the 12 unions.
Okay.
That represent the rail workers in question. The 12th is considerably smaller than the others. It's 4,000 members or so, 4,000, 5,000,
Okay.
somewhere there. So it's really not of that great concern. Not when, out of 150,000 workers.
Yeah, right.
But as of right now, we're just waiting on ratification votes from the other 11. And as long as everyone votes yes, hopefully they do, seems like a reasonable deal.
And this
what
is
we're
a
seeing.
potential strike from the various, I guess you said 12 unions that represent those that actually work on, the railroads nationwide and the railroads, obviously.
It's primarily, train drivers, engineers, that type. So, we were really looking at something that could have been a drastic situation for the entire country, really affect the global economy as a whole.
Yeah, I know you're sending around some good info on, what it actually meant, and there was some crazy number, like if the rail strike happened, you need like 470,000 trucks a day or something or to move all that freight, which is obviously impossible. So it's crazy to think how big of a deal that is and would have been, and how big of a industry the rail is to, in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, the estimation, I think, is that it would have cost the U.S. economy $2 billion a day. And it, as you said, it would have needed 500,000, 450,000 more trucks per day than we have right now. So that's...
Meanwhile, you can't get enough trucks today.
Yeah.
Never mind count the railroads out.
Meanwhile, most places were still struggling to move stuff by truck. But, I mean, we are seeing capacity open up on that. And it just, brings back to mind for people, with your supply chain and things like that, just how you have to be prepared for anything to happen. I mean, because really the real issue with the rail strike would have been the ripple effect onto the other industries. Because you don't realize that, like, your LTL shipments are even impacted, your food, all of that. So.
Yep. I know I had customers that typically buy stuff in rail that were placing truckload orders just to have it in the queue in case that did happen, just so they're at least in line versus trying to scramble after the fact. So it's good that it was averted. Seems like hopefully that there's positive news there and that those discussions continue and get signed and there's no future issues with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's really all we can hope for, is that all the members just vote yes and we can move on. Yeah,
we talked a little bit earlier. It's one of those industries that's not exactly super exciting or sexy, but it's an important part of the backbone of the U.S., not just with chemicals, obviously, which is the big focus on TCC, but moving freight, food, people. I mean, it's amazing how much of a priority that still is in the economy, and would have been drastic if that, went out even for a couple of days.
Yeah, even a few days would have been terrible.
Yeah.
But
two good signs, I guess. Trucking capacity improving a little bit, and then the rail strike being averted, hopefully leading to some positive signs, more or less, in the kind of general logistics industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely positive for logistics. Trucking, loosening up a little bit does indicate that things are slowing down with the economy as a whole.
Sure.
We're seeing that with the repackaging and with the warehouses in general, that it seems like most inventories are high, so that would indicate that as well.
Yeah, we've seen some warehouses taking in new material because they said they were full or near capacity. People pushing out orders or holding on inventory and not producing as much, which is first time I've seen that. Not that I've done this forever, but it was certainly, I think, a unique thing seeing warehouses stocked to the brim.
Yeah, I mean, we have, places where we have containers that customers want delivered and there's nowhere to put the material. So it's just sitting in container yards, which is previously the issue that we were having was, a year ago, we had containers sitting in yards just because we couldn't get it delivered from the trucking standpoint.
Right.
So now it's kind of flipped around to
you can't,
everyone has it and we just can't get it.
Yeah, you can find a truck to deliver it, but the customer now doesn't want it. So you got the opposite problem.
Yep.
Well, some positive signs, obviously, I think kind of mirrors what we're seeing a little bit with things being a little bit slow in Q3 and may remain through Q4 with people bringing down inventories for the end of the year and things like that. So seems like that'll maybe a trend here for the next few months, barring any other drastic. We obviously haven't seen any hurricanes yet, which hasn't impacted freight and availability down in that region. Obviously coming into winter months up in New England, so that'll impact freight as it does every year. So
yeah, and that will all impact inventory levels too. If you think about if all the warehouses are stuffed full and that in like Houston and then you get a hurricane in, then it's really not great from that standpoint either.
Right. Especially the potential damage of those warehouses. I mean, you got more than normal inventory there that could be affected. All these trickle down effects you don't think of off the bat.
Yep.
Obviously we're without your counterpart Joe today. I guess our first solo.
It is
discussion.
It is. First solo discussion.
Beautiful. Well, we'll certainly catch up with Joe here in the next couple months. I'm sure he'll kind of mirror a lot of what we're saying with things being a bit slower, availability improving and whatnot. So some good signs, some maybe not so good signs, but we'll keep an eye on things for Q4. And as always, appreciate the update on what you're seeing on the trucking industry and that quick update on the rail non-strike, I guess, which is good news. So as always, thanks for taking some time and appreciate the update.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, moving on to price updates and trends. I know we are right in the middle of the month, which is good timing for a podcast. Usually we start to kind of get a hint on what's going on for pricing coming into October. I know coming in early September, things were pretty much flat to down across the board. Methanol is down a bit, Adipic's down a bit. Plasticizers have largely trended flat to down. Any thoughts or hints on what might be happening here in the U.S. for October pricing yet? We started to hear anything exciting?
Still that same trend, flat to down. I think there's resistance on the producers' parts to drop too much, especially in light of a floor and a little bit of an increase on propylene type products. We've also seen, some issues with production, specifically TEG, triethylene glycol, very tight right now coming into the winter season. It's used in a lot of winter applications. As far as methanol, it's methanol, the olefins in China is massive consumption, and it's pretty much idle right now. So that's multi-millions of tons demand off the market. Oxo alcohols, propylene being the driver. We're up to in August, and it's
trending up.
It's trending up. So I think we've maybe hit the floor, but the demand is absolutely horrible in Asia and also not so great in Europe. So U.S. has got pretty stable demand, but the types of products that this goes into is slowed. But you're also seeing people shut plants or decrease production by as much as 50% and more. Benzene values, they've come down, but they've sort of stopped coming down. Methanol, going back to that, $8.50 per MMBTU gas, you're looking at close to $1 a gallon cash cost, and we're close to that now as well. So, so it's really painful for producers, I think, at this point, because there's this squeeze. So that's why you're not seeing these massive drops. But then again, we saw this tidal wave of offers from other Asia, not necessarily China, but as Javi mentioned, and we're seeing just very aggressive Korea, Taiwan, India offers. It just goes to show how slow it is there, and they're seeking markets. So it's sort of a balance here of trends towards flat to down, I'd say.
Yep. Yeah, I know Javier, we're looking at some products, especially from Asia this week. Certainly seeing some lower pricing, obviously on things that are 8 weeks out versus some domestic inventory and having high priced inventories. So.
Yeah, but probably 8 weeks out, there will be a correction in for the domestic. So probably at the moment that it arrives, we'll probably be on par.
Yeah,
that might happen.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so it seems like that sort of projection.
And it's going to arrive for December, which we're already saying is going to be a dog because. People are going to correct inventories coming into December and sort of refresh for next year. So there's not really, no wonder if they're trying so hard with dabbling these low prices.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good transition, I think, into the kind of seasonality of some of our core products. Methanol obviously being a big product, and expecting to see some of the glycols starting to pick up. Hopefully, have our product manager for both the methanol and the glycols on a episode here soon to talk more about our position. I know, AJ, you've obviously closely followed the glycols market historically. But, a couple big products that we're coming into the peak demand season for. So things that we're happy to talk about.
Yep. Yeah, I can't speak to glycols real well. I've been out of it for a few months now. But, yeah, it's definitely something that we have a good position on and are ready to supply for the seasonal demand.
Yeah, starting to pick up now. I think we've had a couple inquiries over the last week or two, especially on the methanol side of things. So obviously something we're happy to talk about coming into the cold months, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just heard that methanol might be one of our bigger volume products this month. So it's, certainly picked up considerably, seasonality wise, even in September.
Yep.
People aren't even using windshield wash fluid yet.
I know. It's they're building inventory. They're expecting a lot of snow for the skiers this year and snowboarders. So,
yeah, I haven't read much about the winter. Is it supposed to be a bad winter? You guys have any idea?
They really blew it on the hurricane forecast.
Yeah.
So
right,
let's not let's not worry much about the forecast then.
Based on the last few winters, it's going to be warm, and then it's going to be a long, cold spring.
I hope not. I hope you're wrong. But
do you like the cold?
I do. I obviously I'm like, no, we live in New England for a reason, right? The 4 seasons. You can't beat it.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
Javi's going to be our big trade show representative here for the next couple months.
Yes.
What's coming up on the trade show front here?
Trade show, we have EPCA coming up in Berlin. Ray Altenberger and Steve Freewell will be there representing us. After that,
seems like it'll be an interesting EPCA, maybe a little bit quieter than historical years with what you guys have seen.
Yeah, it's gonna be quieter,
maybe a little depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, there were talks of canceling at one point, right, because of the energy costs.
There was a rumor of canceling at one point, but it's happening. It's happening. We'll be there.
You see a lot of like our European contacts there, but we don't see. I mean, we're usually full not only with European contacts, but our contacts from Asia, our contacts from Latin America, and some U.S. None of that, really.
No.
Right? I mean, it's just Europe.
Yeah, so it has become a regional.
Very much so.
Not a much of an international one as it used to be.
Right.
Seems that way, at least.
It seems similar with AFPM this year. Like, it was less international attendance, right?
Yeah.
That seemed more regional than in past years.
That is true.
But I thought that was due to some travel restrictions as well, right? There was still a lot of that was taken into consideration. So I'm curious this upcoming March, how that might shift.
We were talking the other day about like the shows are like, depending on how robust the industry is, it's amazing. Like, when things are really good, like last year, AFPM in the US, things were really good. Tons of people, from USA, because there was the restrictions on European and Asia travel. But even before COVID and all the, last few years, the changes, but you'd see when the industry was really good, you'd see double the amount of people at AFPM, EPCA, APIC, APLA. And then when things go down like they are now, you see a major shift to lower numbers of people. So I wouldn't be surprised if EPCA saw lower. But this is really when things are tough that you need to be there.
I was going to say, you almost get more value out of being there when things are slower to build new relationships and have stuff pick back up.
Mm-hmm. And then following that will be the K Show in Dusseldorf, Germany. That'll be later in October, second half of October. I'll be walking the show with Steve Freewell. So looking forward to that. I'll have a lot of meetings lined up already with all suppliers and customers and dinners and good beer, good German beer. So
I'm surprised you saved that for last.
Yeah, I gotta say it. I gotta say it. And then the APLA, and APLA seems also very regional this time around, very regional and low attendance. It seems like I've seen the list, and they're extending the early bird registration.
Really?
Yeah, usually the early bird was in July. The early bird still now.
So do you think that's gonna change, and people are waiting to see how that attendance builds up before registering?
I think so. Some people register late, but for the early bird registration to still be going on,
yeah.
they must be desperate.
Right.
Yeah, that gives you a hint.
What does it cost to register? Do you know?
$1,100.
That's the early bird.
The early bird.
You know how much it is normally?
1,400, 1,500. So yeah, you do some savings.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if people wait to register, like they'll pay the extra $300 and wait to see if it's gonna be good or not. Like if it's good, they'll pay it. If not, they just won't.
Yeah.
Pay. So
yeah,
be interesting to see how that shapes up.
Yeah, and then after that we have the Plastic Compounders Conference in Washington D.C. Registration is available right now. We have a good contingency of TCC. Our experts at Flexible PVC will be there.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a good show.
That was a good show, and they picked good locations.
Yeah, like DC in December this year is not one of the more exciting ones.
Yeah.
But, usually it's pretty good. The value to doing that is there's a lot of speakers that can have come from DC that, people from different industry groups and things like that. I think we have someone coming from an automotive industry group, and then we had someone come last year who's coming again from a like housing group, talking about what's going on with new housing and developments and things like that, which obviously are core end uses for a lot of our products. So it's always interesting going and hearing what they have to say. So DC in December might not be the most fun location, but it's great for having people come, and it's easy to have
should be a
speakers
good
and things like that.
should be a good show.
Yeah, it definitely should be.
What's on me?
And then Nicole's fast on Plan 2023. So I guess at some point we'll start talking about that here soon.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how close that is in the pipeline. It seems so far out, but
Yep.
we're
You're already planning.
yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
Nicole asked us yesterday what our plans were for arriving to a show in June. I was like,
Of next year.
I don't know what I'm doing next week.
I think I freaked them out. They were like, "Well, wait, when is it?" And I was like, "June 2023." And they're like, "Wait."
Yeah.
They all kind of burst out laughing, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm just used to."
I thought it was like
planning.
November of next year. I screwed something up. It's like, no. So, but we need some of that. We need someone looking that far ahead. You know?
I do my best. I do my best.
Take advantage of the early bird registration.
We get the early bird.
The earlier bird.
the blue plate special.
Basically free. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, lot to kind of wrap our head around. I think we're seeing a lot of different things happening in different regions between Europe and Asia and the U.S., Latin America. Be interesting to hear from like K-Show and APLA and things like that.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
That's fun. It makes us fun. It's very interesting what we do.
Yep. It's probably interesting to go back to so obviously we're doing this podcast for a couple of years now, which is crazy to think. And there's always a lot going on. It's always like different things. So, this time last year, I'm sure there were 4 other big catastrophes going on that were impacting a lot of stuff. So it's interesting. There's always stuff going on. Just a matter of figuring out the equation on what that means for business. Any wise words to wrap things up? Any final thoughts?
You looking at me?
I'm looking at you.
Yeah, don't cut your travel budget, right now. This is this is a trend that I'm also seeing. Don't cut, your sales, Really, I've been leaning on you guys a lot lately, saying this is a very important time to get on the road. It's been a couple years since many of us have seen each other. Tremendous turnover in the industry. It's not a good time to look at expenses like travel and sales expenses and start nickel and diming. It's time to get back to work, and as I say, we're pitching, we're not catching anymore. So I just have been discouraged to hear from competitors or customers or suppliers that we're not going to be able to attend this show or meet or go here or there because the smart people in charge have decided to cut budgets. So I think that's all I got, Ben. If that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, it's amazing how important that in-person stuff is. We had a couple suppliers come in last week and had lunch and meetings. You just get so much out of that meeting. We actually had a guy stop in the office out of the blue yesterday. Did you hear about that?
No.
That guy that came in? Just walked in the front door, wanted to talk to someone about buying XYZ products from us. Just
Good.
out of the
Good
blue.
man. I'm proud of him. Get his number. You know, I mean, that's what we have to do. I mean, you know, we just went through a very crazy period, and now it's time to get back to, you know, ingenuity and entrepreneurship and, you know, and, you know, just, you know, make this business as strong as it can be, you know?
Yeah, just something little like that. He drove half hour down here, you know, said hello. We talked for 10 minutes, but you put a name to a face. You kind of have that beginning to a relationship versus someone that called in. It was sort of a cool thing.
Super important.
I think it's one of the first times I've ever heard of somebody showing up trying to buy something. It's usually people show up trying to sell stuff, but this guy was trying to buy.
We need more of that.
Right?
Yeah. I think that sort of wraps things up. I said, like, there's not a whole lot going on. Obviously there is a whole lot going on, but I think lot to keep in mind, lot to wrap your head around with the different things that are going on. Hopefully this info is all helpful and helps lead to some decisions for planning in a Q4. So looking forward to hearing about some of these trade shows coming up between K-Show and things like that going on, and see how Q4 shapes up and go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, as always, appreciate your guys' time. Good talking to you all. I know we all sit 50 feet apart from each other, but we always learn a lot, I think, sitting down and talking to each other like this. So good episode. I think a lot of important stuff going on here. You know, as always, appreciate you listening, whether you're on the video version or streaming the audio, wherever you get your podcasts. You know, as always, there's obviously show notes down below with links and outlines on things we were talking about here. I know our team with Kettlebottom Creative does a great job clipping up different episodes and clips to the podcast. So hopefully some good sound bites that come out of this. So as always, appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for streaming the View from Jamestown podcast edition.
Like and subscribe for more.